Defund the Dems and the dumbest bill in America. You heard it right. Defund the Dems and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the millennial joining me today is Garrick Ross. How's it going, Garrick?
Mondays suck and the dumbest bill in America. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today?
And of course, we have Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer. How's it going, Chris?
I'm good.
And Adam Couture, our producer. And so this podcast is called Defund the Dems because we're saying the Dems, want to defund the police. So let's just defund the Dems, right? Let's just get rid of this party that has lost its mind. How much has it lost its mind, do you ask? How much has the Democrat Party lost its mind? Well, white police officers and community members wash the feet of black faith leaders in North Carolina. Is it Cary, North Carolina, where did they do it?
Yeah, right outside of Raleigh.
It's in Cary, North Carolina. White police officers and community members wash the feet of black faith leaders in Cary, North Carolina, so as to, at least the story says it, express humility and love. That's from the UK Daily Mail. Well, we have something that you actually have to watch and listen to very carefully. Listen to the commentary of this individual who's talking while these people are conducting the washing of the feet. Here is the clip.
All of our white race, and then we've just heard about one race in all of humanity. But Lord, we stand here, Lord, confessing, repenting, Lord, for our aggression. Lord, repenting for our pride, for thinking that we are better, that we are above. Lord, we repent, we stand here, we repent for our greed. Lord, that our greed that we have put our hands, our knees upon the necks of our African American brothers and sisters, people of color, of indigenous people. Lord, we ask for your forgiveness. Lord, we stand in the gap and we ask for your forgiveness, Lord. I ask, Lord, as a pastor, Lord, where we as a church, a white church, have used you as persecution towards black people, Lord, as we've burnt crosses, as we've burnt churches, God, where we were meant to be symbols of your love and of your goodness, and we've used it as a weapon against people of color. And Lord, we repent, Lord, on behalf of all of our people, Lord, as an English person, God, here in America, Lord, I repent on behalf of the colonialism, Lord, and the oppression that came, God, I repent. And Lord, I ask for your forgiveness, God, for putting in our hearts such hatred that we would perpetrate slavery. Lord, that we would perpetrate injustice, that we would perpetrate prejudice, God, even to this very day, even in our legal system. God, I ask for your forgiveness, God.
So I know that is a long clip. That was a lot to take in.
That is a lot to unpack.
That's a lot to take in. So
I better not say his name in vain near that guy. Good Lord.
So there's a lot to unpack here. You're right about that, Garrick. What we have.
Can we start with the obvious one? Who is this British guy?
Yeah, who is he? Who is he?
What is this?
Got a guy with a British accent here in the United States, which is fine.
Yeah.
But
he's a pastor, apparently.
I'm not sure about that, actually. I'm not really sure. But here's the thing. The left always has to co-opt institutions, great institutions, and great parts of Western civilization. Now they're trying to co-opt the church and change it into something that is completely different than the purpose of the church. They're saying, well, colonialism, and he even said, this gentleman with a British accent even said, the white church subjugating, if you will, the black church. What? The white church? I mean, if you're a church goer, right, and you believe in Jesus Christ, and you go to church, you get to choose in the United States, which church you want to attend. Doesn't matter your color. Doesn't matter your race. You can go to any church you want to, and you can stop going to any church you want to. And you can even choose not to go to church at all. But this guy is saying in his, kind of monologue as the feet are being washed by these, I guess it's cops, right? Police officers that are watching.
Community activists.
And you got people in the background, crying. It seems so staged, but at the same time, real to them, that the church is evil because the church, the white church, once again, Democrats separating people by gender. Here they are, and by race as well, but here they are at an event that's supposed to unify, Garrick. And what does this so-called person with the British accent say? He separates people by race in the actual church, which is absurdly ridiculous. Let me tell you something. Jesus Christ would never support that. Never. Never. And this guy is an idiot. This is a cult. This, where you have these police officers doing this, this is a cult, and it is sick. It is scary. It almost looks to me like we're watching in real time a re-education camp that seeks to destroy all of Western civilization and say all that is good in America is actually bad and can be canceled by the cancel culture by a single incident. Go.
I'm just amazed that to some of these people that they think, like, I understand, like, I understand the principle that they're trying to expose here. You know, Jesus in the Bible, he washes the feet of the poor to show and express his humility and his things, but
also wash the feet of his disciples.
And his disciples, you know, and I get it, but this isn't it. Like, this, I just don't understand what is happening here in terms of substantive change, you know, policy reform.
Well, first of all, these police officers are not, you know, they're not Jesus.
No, yeah.
And they're projecting the left and the progressives.
I think that's where my biggest issue is
on everybody. They're saying it's the cancel culture,
you know,
on steroids. It's saying that all of us are responsible for what certain individuals did. 4 individuals. 1 in particular, but 3 watched in Minneapolis. Go.
And I mean, even more than that. I mean, they're saying that we're, you know, all the product of hundreds of years of institutional deficiencies that are inherently naturally bad. And to me, that just seems a little outlandish on its own right. But the fact that, and I think this is where we're talking about the religious aspect of it. I think this is where we should all kind of focus here on why it bothers, or at least it's very striking, is because, like you said, it's
dangerous.
It's co-opting.
It's dangerous.
It's co-opting faith and religion and trying to instill in it a message that I think
it's throwing,
you know, the
it's
message
throwing
that
religion
needs to be
under the bus and saying this is the new religion.
And and it's like the message that they want to preach in its own way is already in the Bible in a much more, you know, tame and less, like, you know, outrageous display of atonement, I guess. It's just the video. First of all, the video was really freaking me out a little bit. You know, hearing all the people, like, just so we're not watching it here. We listen to the videos, and it's just like hearing all those sounds, like, you know, people crying and, you know, this man preaching in there. It's like it's the most staged and, to me, you know, what's the word?
It's unnerving. I mean, look, just for the podcast listeners to know that when Christopher Hopkins was putting that clip together, since obviously that's what he does, he was looking at it and he was creeping him out too. So I think it's interesting. Both of you, you know, you could tell that it was unnerving to both of you in that it was putting the hair up, you know, like the back of your head. The hair was standing up. Like,
it was freaky.
This is
to
really
watch.
weird. This is not church, for example, and it's also not appropriate. And when you really listen to the words, and that, unfortunately, the average American. I really don't want to go there. Let's just say a lot of Americans, not average, because this has nothing to do with average or below average or above average. Many people will watch this video and go, isn't that beautiful? But you should listen to the words.
I really think a lot of people are going to look at this video and feel the same way that, you know, me and Chris did.
Which is what?
Which is, what is going on here? Like, it is just out of the realm of normalcy, you know? Like, I am all for having met, look, I attend church pretty regularly when I do go home, and, you know, when we go into church and we have these conversations, you know, looking and analyzing the Bible and the figures in it and the messages, you know, it's a good way to learn, but also, you know, apply these lessons to topics like these in contemporary times. Like, we can talk about race issues in the Bible and apply the messages and how we should all love each other into our lives through that way. But, like, going out into public and having these, I guess it's an atonement ceremony, you know, of like you said, kind of almost cult-looking-ish, you know. It's
also so self-serving because,
and that's the other
why
thing.
Is it necessary to videotape it? See, this is, and once again, this is the classic boomer basically going right after the millennial
I don't know,
boomer
Mark,
divide.
a lot of
which
people
is
in that video seem to be all over the age spectrum there.
true, but
that's the other thing is a lot of people
But
were
the gentleman
doing
who was
this-
talking sounded like he sounded I don't know.
Younger.
Sounded very young. And my impression is that we always have to have
It's
like,
a lot of it's self-fulfilling. Like I think that's what you're getting at. It's like it's all self-fulfilling. People are doing this action not necessarily because they think it's the right thing to do, but because they think it'll cure them or
Yes.
make them atone
He even brought
for
up
anything they did.
colonialism. He said, and for America's colonialism. So he's now it's they want to cancel the police. They want to cancel the church because now the church is racist, according to this British dude who's talking during this video. And he's saying, end colonialism. They want to cancel America. Really? It's interesting. Ronald Reagan said, and this is his quote, he said, "We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It's time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions."
Oh wow, personal responsibility. That is
Exactly. And that is
a foreign concept to some.
It's a foreign concept, in my opinion. Don't get upset with me, millennials, but in my opinion, the boomer generation, it was like, man, you are held accountable. You may not like it. For some reason, there is a disconnect that has occurred during the millennial generation, and it started with them, where it's like, there's no accountability. I'm sorry, you lost the soccer game? Here's a participation trophy.
And it's funny you say that, because I have this conversation with my dad a lot, and I bring up my dad because he's around the same age as you, and he has a lot of, I think, or at least some of the same views about, how parenting is important in instilling values in the next generation.
Just having a parent show up is important. Apparently that's an issue as well, but go ahead, sorry.
But like overall, a lot of the messages of parenting, and he always talks about the participation trophy, but he talks about it as like and I understand his point, so I'm going to co-opt it, as a small part of a larger conversation about how we teach children and the next generation to view things like accountability. And, our generation, where everything was particularly handed to us and we were, for lack of a better word, given a proverbial silver spoon, we're always looking for somebody
else. Life has been very good for millennials. Very good. Even if you're a millennial that grew up in a poor household, life has been far much better for you than it was, number of generations ago.
Yeah, my grandmother
because you have a
was
cell
poor,
phone.
and she grew
poor
up
people have cell phones.
Yeah, my grandmother was poor, grew up on a farm. She didn't have a running washer and dryer until she was 18. Electricity was, turn the lights on, and that was it. There wasn't.
But back to personal responsibility, because that's where you started.
Yeah, so a lot of this, I think, is really down to how we teach our children when it comes to accepting what is right and wrong and things like personal accountability.
And holding them accountable. So here's an example. Here's a boomer example, right? I have 3 children. They all grew up they're all, basically millennials. Not basically, they are. They're all millennials. And my wife and I would often discuss when one child did something, how would we correct that? What would be the teaching moment? Well, the first part of the teaching moment is the discussion of what they did that did not make you happy. And the second part is the punishment, right? Which is the teaching moment, like there is a consequence for what you did.
Yeah.
And this is the problem in the millennial generation. Generally speaking, they don't believe there should be consequences for their actions. And we realized you could do nothing better to make your millennial child feel responsible and take ownership of what they did,
and the risks,
than to take away their cell phone. But when you took away their cell phone, it was like, you should have heard it. It's like, you're taking away my cell phone. I can't believe it. Not permanently, but for a period of time.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. There are so many millennials who don't think that, they think they can say anything they want to on social media, which they can, it's a free society, or they can say anything they want to you, Garrick, or me, and it's going to be consequence-free. That is to say, I can't respond. I can't respond.
And a lot of it is not just that, personal responsibility has been taken out. The risks that demand personal accountability have been taken out of the the raising phase of childhood. And let's look at school. This is a really stupid and simple example, but I think is indicative of the larger argument. Kids can't play dodgeball in school anymore. in gym
Is
class.
this everywhere or just some places?
In my high school and
Okay.
across New Jersey and
Right,
and
in
public
Jersey where you went to
schools,
school. Why is that?
because it was too violent. There was too much of a risk. There was too much.
There were winners and losers,
There's
and the winners and losers
losers.
were very apparent in dodgeball, right?
Yes, and
it was
it's-
always very apparent.
and it's
And you also
things
knew,
like
correct me
these.
if I'm wrong, when you played dodgeball.
You know who was good and who was bad.
You knew who you could hit first on the
Yeah.
other side because
Yeah.
you knew they were so bad
Yeah.
that, and you also knew who was good, and you were hoping that you could get the people on your team to gang up on that person and throw, like 10 balls at that one person at the same time, which is also a smart idea.
Yeah,
right?
and it's
strategy. It teaches you strategy. It
Yeah.
teaches you teamwork.
And it's things like that are kind of absent from one generation to the next. I think are very important in instilling.
But millennials,
in children.
they took that away for millennials because,
Yeah, and I think it's missing things like that. Missing the risk. Going through risks and learning from the mistakes, or just learning from the experience. I'm not even going to call them mistakes. Just going through life and experiencing things and taking a risk on something or doing something risky. Maybe not doing it to fruition and then having to go back and adjust. And those things are important in building character.
Personal
and
responsibility
and how we deal and approach situations.
Personal responsibility, I don't want to overstate the fact that it's gone from America because it still very much exists, especially in many suburban communities, not all obviously, but certainly many rural communities, I think for sure, because of values-based homes and values-based education.
Yeah.
But personal responsibility in so many places in America is gone.
And
it's
how,
gone.
and here's where we bring it all together, people. So when you look at places that are trying to co-opt religion, and a lot of the places that preach personal responsibility are households that have a very spiritual definition or a values-based definition
Sure.
of how they raise their kids, and a lot of it is in religious areas, religious homes. And when you have organizations that want to co-opt religion and shift it into something, it is in its own right a conceited effort to redefine the values that we do instill in our children.
Absolutely. Great point. So residents of Minneapolis start their own citizen patrols, or police force, if you want to call it that. Obviously, the citizen patrols are not armed. As to the best of my knowledge, they're not, at least not yet. But some residents in Minneapolis are doing that because obviously what they really want to do is cancel the police, which we will get to a little bit later. But we do want to talk about the MPD 150 movement in Minneapolis, which apparently the school board in Minneapolis and the union, I think it's the school board and the teachers union, call on the Minneapolis district to sever ties with the police department, And in the wake of the police murder of George Floyd, the Minneapolis School Board and union moved to sever ties with the police, recognizing that SROs, which are the special resource officers, or high school resource officers in schools, are harmful to students and the community. A similar ask was made by the president of the University of Minnesota to get rid of the police officers on campus. And it says, we celebrate these as brave and necessary steps to get rid of these police officers in public schools and in the public universities, and eventually the abolition of the police. So I just want to speak to this idea of getting rid of the SROs in Minnesota. We've seen over a period of years the increase in school shootings, which is it's directly related to mental health issues, right? No doubt about it, mental health issues that have gone unattended, mostly. And there are other reasons as well. Sometimes it's just pure evil. But the fact of the matter is there has been a move towards putting these special resource officers or high school resource officers or school resource officers, whatever you want to call them, inside of schools. And these resource officers, by the way, generally speaking, they are not uniformed. They are dressed casually.
Yes. In high school, mine was uniformed. I think it depends on the district and the locality.
They may or may not.
They may or may not be.
They may or may not carry a gun as well, but usually they do.
Yes.
And that's the whole point that they're there, is because they are carrying a gun.
Yes.
And here's where I'm going with this. So many children in these schools that go to these schools don't have father figures because the father showed up, He helped to make the baby and then took off. It's so common, especially in cities like Minneapolis. And so when these children, boys and girls, go to public school and they have this high school resource officer there, or there's a resource officer in middle school, in some cases, even elementary school, these resource officers know these kids, they know their backgrounds, they know their challenges, and they actually befriend them to try to help them. And I know this for a fact because I've talked to so many of them. They know the issues facing each and every student, and they talk to them, say, "How was your weekend?
Yeah.
How was it with I heard you stayed with your dad this weekend," because obviously the mom and dad are divorced. How'd that go? And the fact of the matter is it helps so much to have these officers there because they befriend the children and they learn about them and they learn about their psyche at that particular moment and how they can help them. And in Minneapolis, based on Mr. Floyd's behavior, where he clearly murdered, where the police officer, clearly murdered Mr. Floyd, now Minneapolis wants to just cancel the police, and the first step is to get rid of these resource officers in schools. Thoughts on that?
So I think two things can be true. I don't think that taking school resource officers out of schools would do anything particularly beneficial for whatever they're shooting for here. I also think we should also.
Well, wait a minute. What are they shooting for? Excuse the pun. The fact of the matter is you're taking these guys.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand what the objective is of removing school
Because
resource officers entirely. Like,
because
what does that accomplish?
It's part of
other
the
than just
madness
part
of the left.
Yeah, but that's my point.
They've gone crazy.
That's my point. I don't think it does anything. But I also think we should look at
It does a lot. It makes them less safe.
Well, yes, but I don't think it does anything beneficial for the community as a whole in the schools.
It does the opposite. I think that's what you're trying to say. It does a lot. It makes them completely unsafe and it makes them worse than they've been.
Yes, and so I also think that there are instances where we should look at the way school resource officers are used in schools and how so too often I think we're way too willing to give certain roles to police forces and institutions to do things that I don't think they're necessarily equipped or properly trained to do. So for instance, when it comes to school resource officers, I think I think the examples you say are critical and important, that, for some that these police officers are in a, particularly parental role or know their kids, and I think that's important. But I also think it shouldn't just be the school resource officers who do this. I think it should be your guidance department. It should be
it's not,
clubs and things.
What we're saying is, look. So.
But I'm saying we shouldn't be willing to just necessarily hand all of these responsibilities to police officers.
I don't think they have, because look, the whole reason, it's important for the listeners, by the way, the whole reason why the school resource officers are there is because the administration of the school and the teachers tell the school resource officers, here is the list of children who have problems that could turn into something greater.
Right.
Okay? We know who they are. We've identified them. We're telling you guys, the school resource officers, so that you can work with them a lot closer while they're in the hallways and they're changing classes, not just to watch them to make sure they're not wreaking havoc, these students, but also to try to get to know them, befriend them, and find out what's really happening back at home. And police can do that in a way that's more acceptable to society than teachers, because there's so much regulation with teachers and so forth. Certain questions you can't ask. Police can do that because that's actually their job. They're trained. The police officers are to get to know you. It's like, so for example, let's say that there's a kid that constantly is causing problems in the classroom, and the student at one point punched the heck out of a fellow student and then threatened to hit a teacher in the face. One of the things the school resource officer does is he asks the question to the kid, so, how's your dad? My dad doesn't live with me. Oh yeah, how about your mom? Well, my mom's been arrested and she's in drug rehab. So who are you living with? I'm living with my grandparents. Oh, okay. So do you guys have any guns in there? What do you think about that? The police officer asks those questions in a way that's disarming to both sides to find out if there's a potential problem that could happen. Way to go, Minneapolis. We're trying to get rid of them. Idiots. By that, I'm being sarcastic. Minneapolis, you're absolute idiots for trying to get rid of this.
Right.
Go.
Fair. To a lot of your points, I think are well taken. And I also think that, something you outlined where, teachers and principals can't get to the bottom of some of these things, I think is a shame. I think who is more involved in your kid's life than the person they sit in front of every day for hours on end? And, to not be able to build relationships or at least learn about your students in that respect, to me, seems a little, out of the realm of normalcy. You would want there to be, I would want there to be layers before a school resource officer has to actually get involved. Like, I would want them to, the students to have a very good and working relationship with their teachers, because, that breeds educational success.
Here's another problem, too. It's another challenge for Minneapolis and many other districts across America. There has been a trend in America to build schools bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what happens is when you have a couple
kids and
thousand people inside of a school, you really don't know who's there anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas the smaller schools, people
More
know
personal
one another.
relationship.
And smaller
There's a reason
schools,
colleges advertise student to faculty ratios.
there's a reason why private schools, K to 12, advertise faculty to student ratio, because they say, oh, we have 10 children per teacher. It's 10 to 1, and therefore everybody that is in your school, their parents, at least you've met them, you know kind of what's going on, because you have more opportunity to get to know them because the smaller class size. And will that cost more? Yeah, but the best way to fix all of this, in my opinion, is for Minneapolis to just lay off and let this one part of policing action, which actually clearly does work and does save lives.
Okay.
Final thoughts on that?
No, I agree. And I think, like you said, we always talk about how education is important for social mobility and great outcomes, and taking the investment in allowing students to have good school experiences and, safe school experiences is pivotal for the overall discussion that we're having.
So get this, podcast listeners. J.K. Rowling is accused of making anti-trans comments on Twitter. J.K. Rowling is the author of the Harry Potter series and has made literally herself a billionaire as a result of this series. Not just the books, but the movies and all of the other stuff that you can buy that's, Harry Potter accoutrements, if you will.
Yeah.
But J.K. Rowling...
It's a whole cult following at this point.
It is. People love it.
People love it.
And she, J.K. Rowling, apparently made comments on Twitter a couple times.
Yes.
And Garrick is going to read the comments. We're going to just read the first group or the second group.
Aficionado here.
All right, so here are the comments. Let's hear it.
It's 3 tweets. It's a day ago. Now, I would be remiss to say that this isn't the first time J.K. Rowling has been on fire about this this very topic. This is something she brings up pretty frequently. So here it is. Quote, "If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. The idea that women like me, who've been empathetic to trans people for decades, feeling kinship because they're vulnerable in the same way as women, i.e., to male violence, hate trans people because they think sex is real and has lived consequences, is nonsense. I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it is hateful to say so."
Now, is there a second tweet as well?
That's the whole tweet.
That's the whole tweet.
That's all 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Twitter, the Twitter users swiftly criticized the tweet.
The woke mob
For appearing to define a woman. So the Twitter mob decided that J.K. Rowling was appearing to define a woman as a person who has a menstrual period and equivocating one's sex or sex organs with their gender identity. That's exactly what she was doing, because that's what makes you a woman or a man. It's biological.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds like.
so why is this hard?
So it sounds like J.K. Rowling is a second wave feminist in a third wave feminist world, and she is behind the times. Though that is true, I don't think she's particularly behind the times. I think there's a lot of merit to what she said, and for as many people who wanted to, pile on her,
she's talking about something that's science-based.
Yeah,
right?
She's, and I also empathize with the point that she's making about
which is what? What's her point?
About women having a story and a shared and a lived, set of circumstances, in their own mission for progress. You know, there was a time in this country not long ago that women couldn't vote, women couldn't do any of the basic things that men can do now. And for them, it has been a long, historical struggle to receive equality in the eyes of the law and in the values that we do, in jobs that we perform. And for her, what she's saying is that, to conflate, people who, change their gender with, being a man or a woman, to her, it nullifies a lot of, by getting rid of sex and gender, you basically diminish the progress that women have made over the last 200 years to be equal.
Right.
And I empathize with her point because, when you talk about figures in prominent women's
also
history,
Title IX, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't say Title IX, but Title IX, the idea that you have women's sports.
that has to equal 1-to-1 with men's.
Correct.
I went to
And
Towson, they cut like half of our sports programs to enforce Title IX.
so that
It's
women
just
have an
one of-
opportunity
yeah.
to have sports that are equal in opportunity for men. Get this, her followers on Twitter pointed out, J.K. Rowling's followers, some of them at least, pointed out that many people who identify as women, such as transgender women and women who have gone through menopause, may not get their periods, while some people who do not identify as women may still menstruate, such as transgender men and some who identify as non-binary. What? I mean, this is the quintessential woke mob trying to blur.
The problem is I don't understand what any of that even means.
Well, I'm a boomer. You know what? I don't understand. That's why I'm hoping you can educate me.
Yeah, these
are your people.
I'm going to admit the limit of my knowledge. I know I don't know everything, and this is in one of those areas where all of it, like when you start getting into some of these really, like, convoluted discussions on what gender means and things that go way over my head.
Yeah, to me, gender means it's very simple. This is, I think, pretty much the accepted boomer population. Gender means you were born a man, so then you were biologically a man. That's how you were born, so you're a man.
Right.
Likewise, if you're biologically born a woman, you're a woman. And that is where you are for the rest of your life. You can dress any way you want. You can pretend in any way you want. You can even mutilate your body. It's not going to change biology.
There is an argument that, if you do those things, like if you are a man born a man and you're a woman born a woman, that is your sex, and that like the gender you do is different, and like I guess I don't really necessarily have a problem. Like you can do what you want. Like part of me being a constitutional, believer in the rights of freedoms, people do what you want. You can do what you want. I don't really particularly care. It doesn't.
But it doesn't
faze
change
me.
science.
But it doesn't change science, and it's like, and you see a lot of these arguments being hashed out at the local, at the community level.
They want to do what they want to do, which is fine. But they also want to change science in the process and say because I'm different.
But you're seeing a lot of these
science
things
is wrong.
Take root in very interesting ways in the community, at the childhood level. So we're talking about in Texas, there's like a notable example of a transgender, so a man he transitioned, that's the word, into a woman while he was in high school, and then competed in women's wrestling in Texas high schools, because Texas high schools offer women's wrestling.
So they have high school women's wrestling in Texas.
Where
this guy is a biological man.
Transferred into a woman.
Basically he's a biological.
He's a biological man who is identifying as a woman.
But he's a minor, so he's
a minor.
biologically a young man or a boy, and he's deciding to identify as a woman.
And he's competing in these things, and he is like, he's smashed winning.
Of course.
And then we've seen it, there was a UFC fight, I don't know if it's UFC, there was a mixed martial arts fight, it was on TV, it was a huge deal. So there was a man who was
So does he weigh in with the women?
Yes, but this is the thing. He was a man who was identified as a woman, and he was accepted into the women's sports, but he has, a lot of the biological factors of being a man, and he actually
Not a lot of them, he does have them.
Yeah, he has, and he actually severely injured the woman he was fighting against.
Oh, that's news to me. I didn't know that.
A lot of the conversations about the extent to which some of these these gender discussions
that's just woke
go.
stupidity there.
And that's where like I get uncomfortable, because the line of where this should be acceptable, like if you want to be a woman and dress in women's clothes, you can do that, but I don't think you should have. I don't think it should be fair for you to step into a arena dedicated to women with all the biological aspects of being a man.
Sure.
And
I completely agree.
And doing these things there. And I understand that to a lot of people in modern who look at the world see that as a controversial statement, but I don't understand why it should be controversial.
Well,
J.K.
Rowling,
a lot of the harm that it's done.
I mean, this started with J.K. Rowling. No, it's great conversation, and it's interesting that even she's a billionaire at this point, and she's very talented as a writer and so forth. Needless to say. But I'm not sure why she wanted to kind of wade in this area, other than the fact that she probably got tired after a while.
Because it comes up with her a lot. Because a lot of people in her, fan base are very willing to expose a lot of those ideals about, gender meaning a lot of different things.
And her fan base loves not scientists. Her fan base loves science fiction.
Yes.
Because that's what she writes about.
Yeah.
It's very science fiction based, and you would have to believe in science fiction in order to think that when you're born a man, that you can somehow become biologically a woman, and when you become a transgender from a man to a woman, you're a biological man, you become a woman, that somehow you're going to menstruate. Ain't going to happen, all right? It's not going to happen because you're biologically a man. So next up, protests expose that lockdowns are social distance shaming as are a farce. So let's say this again. I didn't say that correctly. Protests expose that lockdowns and social distancing are a farce. And CBS News also talks about this because CBS News, with all of the other woke news outlets out there, they've said for the last couple of months, right, Garrick? They've said, you need to social distance. Don't go out unless you have to.
I am old enough to remember when protesting reopening the economy was a terrible thing.
Don't go out unless you have to. That is to say, don't go shopping unless you have to. Everything has to be closed. Don't congregate with more than 10 people. Really, this is dangerous. You have to really be careful. Well, then the protests happen, and CBS News literally brings on a doctor to talk about the fact that, well, I know like a couple of days ago we said that you shouldn't congregate with more than 10 people.
But actually we were wrong.
But we're wrong, because if you want to go protest, here are the things you should do to be really careful to protest. Whereas, where was he a couple of months ago when he could have said, here are the things you can do if you really want to continue to work and you really want to continue living your life as you have in the past. We have a clip on this, and here it is.
And every time I see these crowds, Doctor, I think about exactly that. Is this going to exacerbate a spike in cases? So how can people protect themselves if they want to, participate in some of these protests?
Well, good morning, first of all. I think you're absolutely right that putting people in large crowds like that definitely poses a big risk. So one of the things you can do if you choose to go out and be part of this would be obviously wear a mask, try not to touch anybody, and make sure that you wash your hands very, very well when you get home. And actually, I would change my clothes too.
So if you want to go out and protest, just make sure, you wash your hands, you change your clothes, frequently, you wash them, those clothes, that is, and that's why.
I would hope you, Chris said it earlier, I would hope you change your clothes every day.
So, CBS News went from everybody's going to die, you can't go outside, you got to stay away from everybody, don't congregate, to here's what you can do if you want to go out and protest, because we want to see more protests.
And you know what? At least they came around, I guess. I mean, you should be able to go outside, live your life, and protest and do whatever you want. I think the whole concept that we all had to stay inside or else everybody's going to die was outlandish and stupid.
I mean, look, initially we didn't know what this was. We didn't know what COVID was. We had to learn more. We saw what happened
I thought
in
the
Italy.
response in the first month or two was very reasonable and justified, when it came to, hope, because like you said, we saw how bad it was in Italy.
But that was then, and now, as you guys have seen.
Now is now.
Yeah, now we see all these protests. It's like, you know what, cat's out of the bag, open up the darn economy. 100% open up the economy.
Yeah.
And those who don't want to go out, don't go out.
Let me
Those who
eat in
don't
a
want to
restaurant
congregate,
again,
don't
please,
congregate.
because I think the whole outdoor requirement to me seems a little stupid. What is the difference between 6 feet inside or 6 feet outside?
Depends on the state that you're in, but yes, a lot of states say you can only eat at a restaurant outside at a reduced capacity. You can't eat inside. Which is just, I know, I agree with you. I feel sorry for the restaurant owners, for sure.
For sure.
So, podcast listeners, should Amazon be broken up?
Oh,
Should Amazon podcast listeners be broken up?
Ooh, this one's been itching at me for a couple
So
of weeks
Garrick
now.
really wants to talk about this. I just want to give a little background.
Yes.
So Amazon started out as a website that sold books. Books,
Yes,
right?
books. It was a book retailer.
And then they decided they're going to sell, books on tape, if you will, or books on CDs, and sell CDs, of course, before you had, obviously
Yes.
digital ability to be able to listen to music. And Amazon, put many, many bookstores across America out of business as a result of offering these books at a reduced price that could be shipped to you.
And you could browse a catalog.
And they would buy some of the books back in some cases, sometimes. Then Amazon said, well, you can now put up your own store on Amazon on our website.
Yes.
So no
it
matter
became
what,
a web host.
no matter what you sell, we are a web hoster. Your products can be sold on our website. Then Amazon started to sell their own products, in some cases, the products that you were selling.
Yes.
Why is that? Because Amazon was collecting data analytics on what you were selling. They're going, you know what? That company that has a storefront on our website is selling a lot of this one item. So we're going to see where we can source that item, since we know Amazon knows exactly how much they're
Kitchen
selling.
supplies.
And we're going to go make it in China, and we're going to sell it ourselves
Even
through
cheaper.
the same website.
Yes.
Literally competing against the people that they were web hosting with and actually trying to help.
Yes, and then expanded their borders even beyond that. So currently, Amazon owns like Amazon Prime Video, which is now a streaming service that competes directly with Netflix and Hulu.
And they have their own
Whole
studio.
Foods,
Amazon has their own
Amazon Prime Studio,
So that is to
yes.
say, they have their own movie studio.
They own Whole Foods.
They own a food franchise or a food store chain that sells food. They ship the food to you. Now they want to establish their own delivery services, and to a certain
They actually
extent,
do most of their shipping for Prime stuff.
They do have some of their own, but they want to have their own freight airline, their own logistics, department for freight airlines, and they bought a newspaper. Or Jeff Bezos bought the
Washington
newspaper.
Post.
And here's the thing. This company, it's not just that it's getting bigger. The issue isn't the size of the company. The issue is that it's predatory. And that is the definition.
And that's where my problem is. So
Okay, so go ahead.
So actually, no, I want to hear, Mark, your opinion on this first, please.
All right, well, look, so before we do that, so the most recent event that happened
Yes.
with Amazon, which is why we're talking about should Amazon be broken up to the podcast listeners, is Amazon has one of their customers that has his own store on Amazon is a writer. And the writer was writing about the fact that he thought the lockdowns for coronavirus were bad. They were faulty. That was based on faulty science. And the writer is very popular. And so Amazon didn't like that. And so Amazon then went ahead and banned the book on their website. So you couldn't actually buy his latest book, nonfiction.
Very progressive of you.
Yes. And so then a really crazy thing happened, and that is Elon Musk, of all people, speaks up.
Who historically, him and Jeff Bezos, however you say his name,
They don't like each
not
other
gotten
anyway.
along. No.
So I'm going to read from the article real quickly. It says, Amazon on Thursday backed away from a decision to block the sale of a self-published ebook about the coronavirus after critics, including Tesla chief executive Elon Musk, criticized the ban of that book. On Thursday morning, Alex Berenson, he's the book writer, he's a conservative media favorite, tweeted to his more than 118,000 followers that Amazon banned his 6,400-word booklet. In other words, you couldn't buy his book on Amazon, whereas you could buy all of his other books on Amazon in the past. The booklet, entitled Unreported Truths About COVID-19 and Lockdowns, talks about, obviously, why there were so many things that weren't reported and how bad it was. So then Elon Musk then tweets, after Amazon won't let Mr. Berenson sell his book, Musk tweets out saying that, you know what, decision by Amazon to not allow him to sell his books, it's just insane. And he directed his comments, Musk directed his comments to Amazon chief executive Jeff Bezos, who also owns the Washington Post, and Tesla owner Elon Musk says it's time to break up Amazon. Monopolies are wrong.
Yes.
So, Garrick, your thoughts on should Amazon be broken up?
Simple answer, in its current state, not necessarily. Long answer, kinda yeah, sort of. So
What the heck does that mean?
So let me break this down for you.
Wow.
It is going to be incredibly hard for anybody to ever effectively make the case to the Department of Justice and certainly a court that Amazon is too big and needs to break up. I mean, one of the few notable examples of monopolies being broken up was the telephone company. And
there are many examples of monopolies being broken up, but look, that's not the issue. The issue is what I'm asking you
is because
you're using the argument: is it too big, right?
Right.
But things have changed with technology, so it's no longer just about bigness. It's about is their technology.
They're competitors.
Are they so predatory that they're
and
running
that is where
everybody out of business?
Where they're bad. Because, quite frankly, Amazon has the capital, the will, and the objective of basically snuffing out anybody who is a direct competitor to them and then acquiring businesses ad hoc for the sake of acquiring businesses ad hoc. Like they own Ring, they own Whole Foods, they own Twitch, which is the predominant streaming platform.
So let me ask you a question. If you own Amazon, if you're the Amazon owner, if you're Jeff Bezos, you run the company, if you will, and you started the company and you're selling a product on Amazon, you being Amazon, it's your Amazon product, and then you also have a competitor on Amazon who's selling their product on Amazon. Shouldn't Amazon tell the person who has a store on Amazon's website, oh, by the way, we're competing against you, and we're going to use our data analytics that we have internally,
and we're going to price point lower and make the same product. I mean, I look at it all the time with kitchen. So like
there should be disclosure about that.
And I also think
that it's not obvious.
I think there should be something in believe me, as a capitalist, I love that I can get things as cheap as humanly possible. But I also think it's slightly predatory that it's the same issue that I have with China.
So should they be broken up?
Yes, sort of, but it's never going to happen. Is your problem?
Well, but before we go there, how should it be broken up?
I think that there should be regulations in place that prevent them from basically acquiring and or outpricing companies looking to establish themselves. There should be laws in place that says, an upstart company comes in and they want to sell forks and knives and, it is designed to be cheap as possible, and then Amazon hosts them on their website. Amazon shouldn't be able to just turn around and lower the price of their product by 30 cents for the sake of doing it. Because they can price out these companies.
Should a company be able to sell, should they be able to sell anything? Look, what's changed is in an era of e-commerce, it's e-commerce on steroids. You can buy anything online, and then you can have it delivered to you. So if you have one company, which is the behemoth that Amazon is, and they sell everything under the face of the sun online, and you buy it from them, and they can sell it to you cheaper because they can use data analytics that they have collected to be able to put their competitors out of business, and then they buy an airline, and then they buy a huge fleet of trucks to do their own deliveries.
When they do,
and then they put FedEx out of business, and then they put UPS out of business, which hasn't happened yet. By the way.
But FedEx has taken a significant hurting since.
And then they utilize the USPS, United States Post Office, to deliver their stuff, and the taxpayers are.
That was one of the things that Trump did that I wasn't necessarily I didn't disagree with. I thought it was a good idea.
So my question is to the podcast listeners: if you believe Amazon should be broken up, how? How should it be broken up?
Right.
And you have to come up with a better idea than, just blow them up. No, there has to be something specific.
Because they have legitimate companies and subsidiaries that do good things. It's the core operation of the e-commerce is where a lot of their issues come up because they are the only player in town.
I think, look, Amazon has an amazing logistics and distribution network, without question. That's what they have. You order it, it gets to your house really, really quickly. That's amazing.
That is their bread and butter.
That is what they have accomplished, and it is awesome. But what I think should happen is, in terms of the breakup, is that there should be a separation between that logistics company and
the marketplace.
And the marketplace or the market store. So therefore, you can't share information, and they can't steal the information of what you're selling online. And they can't, which of course is going to be very difficult, but that has to be regulated. It has to be regulated so that if I'm selling, let's just say I'm selling furniture online through Amazon, and Amazon can't use that information and say, oh my gosh, she sold 100,000 of this type of chair last year. And
Let's make that kind of chair. And
let's
do it
make
again.
that kind of chair in China and let's undersell him, and that's going to generate another $10 million to our bottom line at Amazon. That kind of sharing of information within Amazon can't happen because they have logistics business, which is the delivery and the figuring out of how to get things quickly, and then they have the e-commerce marketplace. What do you think?
It's the same problem that we on the show have with China, whereas companies go over there and they do things with China, but then you're required to hand over your IP. And I mean, in this case, they do it by just posting their stuff on Amazon, and then the Amazon hosts the traffic.
You're giving
and
up
the
all your
web,
data analytics,
and
basically.
you're giving all your sales numbers. What is the demographic typically buying it?
Well, here's
and
something
then they undercut
too.
you.
No, you brought up a really good point, Garrick, because I think maybe podcast listeners that may not know this. But think about it. If you're Amazon and Garrick is selling on your website chairs, and he sells 100,000 chairs, Amazon knows not just how many you sold, but they know exactly to whom you sold them.
Who, where
they live,
what
where
their
the address
socioeconomic
their
status
age,
is,
exactly.
age, the whole nine. It's all very
that's
meticulous.
such valuable information to have, and that's what needs to be prohibited. And also, a large corporation that is unrelated to journalism, in my opinion, should be prohibited from owning a major news outlet.
Yeah,
it should be prohibited,
especially since Bezos is, from my perspective, has used his newspaper pretty freely for his own prerogative.
Absolutely, it's
Even
basically
though he
a
is,
rag
quote, a
for Amazon.
hands-off, he's a
The Washington Post, by the way, was always a rag. When I was in college, the Washington Post, we used to call it Pravda on the Potomac because the major newspaper in Soviet Russia was Pravda in Moscow.
The Pravda on the Potomac.
And we called it Pravda on the Potomac because it was so pro-Russian and so corrupt and so far leftist. Now it's just corrupt. It's not just that it's far leftist, it's just
another thing that
dirty.
Amazon does that puts me of concern is they host their own cloud service. So cloud computing, cloud data, all that is becoming the mainstream and much the wave of how we do things. And Amazon is one of the biggest hosts
Right, you can
for
call
these
up
services.
movies on cloud computing or video games or all kinds of things. And Amazon, there's basically no business that they aren't in or don't intend to be in. And it's like, what are you supposed to go outside and everything's owned by Amazon?
But a lot of the people who can utilize these services aren't necessarily you or me and the average person. He had a controversy where he was hosting out cloud computing software to the CIA.
Got it.
And there's
now Amazon has government.
They have now they're ingrained in government computing and hosting government software and things like that. And it's
so should Amazon be broken up? Yes or no?
As we talk this out loud, I'll give you the firm yes.
Okay, got it. Yes. I think Amazon is too big. I think they're too predatory, and I think it's very dangerous for Main Street of America. So we got to move on, unfortunately, but that's what we think. So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. It's the dumbest bill in America. Do we have a lead up, Mr. Assistant Producer? Yep. And here it is. And it's the dumbest bill in America. And the dumbest bill in America is, wait for it, banning the police. The dumbest bill in America is the idea that we would ban police. And who is the we? Minneapolis. The very place where we had the 4 police officers murder Mr. Floyd, which obviously was a horrible event. And their response is, do we want to train our police better? Do we want to screen the people that we hire better? Do we want to do a better job through education?
Do we want to go after public sector unions?
Right, that which would probably help as well. No doubt about that, by the way. Good point. No, they just want to ban the police department and defund the police, and that's how they're going to do it. Garrick, what do you think about this dumbest bill in America?
I cannot wait to read the operational plan that they plan to put in place instead of the police force, because when you say, disband the police, there's like 1 or 2 examples that so I'm from New Jersey. We have an actually interesting example of this. Camden has had a police department, Camden, New Jersey. If anybody doesn't know what Camden, New Jersey is, it is typically or historically one of the deadliest cities in America, sometimes number 1 on the deadliest city chart. They had a very terrible and inept police force, and so what they did part of this is through the issues with union contracting. And what they did is they actually disbanded the police force, but they didn't like disband the police force and then have citizens run around with, shovels and whatever.
Sure.
They just reformed the police department and used that as a means to get out of their bad contracts and then rehire good police officers and then not rehire the bad ones.
Okay.
And it was a pretty effective way of doing it. But when we're talking about
that was a very significant reform way to reform
when
the
it was
department.
done.
Okay.
It was basically reform and restructuring under the guise of disbanding, but not really a true disbanding of the police. They still have the Camden Police Department. When we talk about Minneapolis, it seems like a lot of people, when they want, to get rid of the police department, they literally want to get rid of the whole police department.
That's literally what they're saying.
And I don't know how you do that.
Well, I mean,
how do you police the streets in a large city with crime?
What you could do is you could send the mafia from New Jersey to take over for the police in Minneapolis, and then it's like, hey, you do that again, I'm going to break your legs.
The mafia.
No, we're kidding. So look, obviously we think at Mark and Millennials that banning the police department and defunding the police is a really stupid movement. Nevertheless, it literally, Garrick, is real. It's moving forward. It being a bill of the council, the city council, so get this, on last week, 9 members, that is all of the Minneapolis City Council, announced they intend to disband the city's police force entirely.
Entirely.
They said, we are committed to dismantling policing as we know it in the city of Minneapolis and to rebuild with our community a new model of public safety that actually keeps our community safe.
Do you know what bothers me?
Council President Lisa Bender told CNN. And then Bender said that the council still needs to discuss what to replace the police with, but that the city would funnel money from police into community-based strategies. She noted that most 911 calls are for mental health services, health, and EMT and fire services. This woman is just an idiot. We've talked about her before, but go ahead.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the thing that bothers me the most is that the same people who were going to overlook this inept police department, which I'm going to call, like, if you read the statistics about how bad the Minneapolis Police Department is, it is a terrible police department. But if you're going to get rid of it and put anything else in place, you have the same idiots in the city council running whatever they put there in the place. I mean, the crux of the issue is the same bad civilian government overlooking whatever this police department is going to be replaced with.
So what are you saying? What you're saying is that the same party has been in charge of Minneapolis for many decades, and the systemic corruption that exists in Minneapolis, wherever it may be, and of course, I would like to say we have 4 police officers who clearly were corrupt.
They did a terrible job and deserve to be fired.
But this entire
charged.
The city council, I mean, they're all Democrats.
Yeah.
And so what's really interesting, they're all outraged, but they're the ones who are in charge
The whole time,
And where's the media to say, you know what? You don't have a right to be outraged because you're the one that's been in charge of the city for decades.
You could have done anything. You could have done something to hold the police accountable.
So get this, Lisa Bender, Garrick, Lisa Bender, she is she's the head, she's the president of the City Council of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
This is the same Lisa Bender who led the way in Minneapolis last August to ban drive-thrus, as in bank drive-thrus, fast food drive-thrus.
In the age of coronavirus, that's really biting you on the butt, isn't it?
We have a clip on this, and we're playing this clip for you about the drive-through ban because it shows you this is a city council that likes to ban stuff because they don't have any solutions to anything. But they wanted to ban drive-thrus because of climate change. And you know what they did? They hurt the poor and the helpless the most in Minneapolis. Just like if you ban the police, that's exactly what you would do as well. We have a clip on this, and here it is.
The Burger King on West Broadway in North Minneapolis is boarded up, graffiti tagged with a raggedy tarp dangling from the marquee sign.
Yeah, it would be nice to not see it boarded up.
It's been this way for months. The restaurant closed more than a year ago.
So do something with it.
The same goes for the Burger King on Nicollet Avenue in South Minneapolis.
It hurts the community because now you have an elephant sitting there hoping somebody come and invest in the property and say, okay, let's get this back going.
Even though Burger King now wants to reopen the 2 locations with a new franchisee, the city of Minneapolis will not allow it because of the city's no drive-through ordinance.
All those in favor say aye.
When the city council passed the ordinance in August, they grandfathered in restaurants like these Burger Kings that already had drive-thrus. But since the building sat empty for more than a year, the Zoning Board of Adjustment ruled they now will have to follow the new rules, leaving some people baffled.
City need to be quiet. For real. They need to open that back up.
Because of convenience, you have people with handicaps that don't want to get out their car. Cold weather like this in Minnesota, it is below zero. Some people, you have kids in the car. So to me, it's a very inconvenience.
The city also heard from supporters of the ordinance who say the drive-thrus create traffic dangers for pedestrians, noise, and pollution from idling cars. The fast food chain's leases last another 15 and 21 years. City Council member Jeremiah Ellison says a corporation that allows their restaurants to turn into this will, quote, find very few sympathies here.
Oh, yes,
What does that even
Stalinists,
mean?
right? The Stalinists are saying that fast food, look, so instead of having fast food chains open, some are now boarded up in Minneapolis because of this ban. And we're telling you about this ban of fast food drive-thrus and bank drive-thrus and so forth because the city of Minneapolis, run exclusively by Democrats for many decades, now wants to defund the police. They have systematically hurt the black community and the poor communities in Minneapolis, and they need to be held. Those elected officials, need to be held to account, and the media needs to do this once and for all. They need to be thrown out. Final thoughts on this?
First of all, Burger King is a terrible fast food franchise, so I have no sympathies there.
It's the home of the Whopper.
That's really about it. No, a more serious note, you get who you elect. I saw something very stunning yesterday. The mayor of Minneapolis, his name is Jacob Frey, I think. I could
sounds
be wrong.
right. Yep.
It sounds right.
He opposes it, by the way.
He opposes it.
He opposes banning police.
And he got whopped for it.
Yes.
He went out to a protest in Minneapolis, and he was there, and he was pouring his heart out, speaking all the woke points. And when they asked him point blank, do you believe in disbanding the police force? He said, no, we need the police irregardless, in some capacity, even if there are reforms. And I believe there's
police to keep people safe. And yes, we have an exception. We have some issues. We have some serious issues we have to address. Go.
Right. And they mocked him and decried him and told him to leave. And it's kind of the state of how this goes. I think there's a serious disconnect between the people who, and as evidenced by the lady who told the city council to stop talking, because there's these people who they legislate and they think they're doing these good things and they just miss the mark. They do, they hurt more than they help. And that's by typical belief with how the government works, is it always tries to do something to fix some problem, by enacting some solution that's really just a ban on this or do this that way. And it always winds up hurting the people that they try to help.
That's exactly right. And that's the final word from Mark and the Millennials, banning the police, which is the dumbest bill in America. And thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our millennial, Garrett Ross. And, of course, our producer, Adam Couture, and our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.